Berlin Conference, 1884 to 1885. The Berlin Conference was a significant diplomatic gathering held in Berlin, Germany, from 1884 to 1885. It aimed to regulate and organize the European colonization and annexation of Africa during the late 19th century. Key facts about the Berlin Conference. Context. In the late 19th century, European powers were engaged in a scramble for overseas territories, driven by economic, political, and imperialistic motives. Africa, with its vast and largely unexplored territories, became a focal point for European expansion. Colonial rivalries, European powers, including Britain, France, Germany, Portugal, and Belgium, sought to establish clear guidelines to avoid conflicts over territorial claims in Africa. The conference aimed to set rules for the acquisition of African territories and to define the conditions under which annexations would be recognized. Organizing principles. The conference established guidelines known as the General Act of the Berlin Conference. It emphasized the principle of effective occupation, meaning that European powers had to establish practical control over a territory to claim it. Scramble for Africa. The conference effectively legitimized the ongoing scramble for Africa. European powers drew arbitrary boundaries on maps, often without regard for ethnic, cultural, or linguistic considerations. The demarcation of Africa's borders during the conference had long-lasting consequences, contributing to many of the continent's contemporary geopolitical challenges. No African representation. Notably, no African representatives were present at the Berlin Conference. The decisions made during the conference directly impacted the lives and destinies of millions of Africans, yet the continent's indigenous peoples had no voice in the proceedings. End of slave trade. The conference also aimed to curb the slave trade in Africa. European powers pledged to work together to suppress the transatlantic and trans-Saharan slave trade. Legacy and criticism. The legacy of the Berlin Conference is controversial. While it succeeded in preventing immediate conflicts between European powers, its arbitrary divisions and lack of consideration for local realities contributed to numerous problems, including ethnic tensions, political instability, and border disputes that persist in Africa to this day. Colonial impact. Following the Berlin Conference, European powers intensified their colonial efforts in Africa. By the early 20th century, nearly the entire continent was under European colonial rule, leading to significant cultural, economic, and political transformations. The Berlin Conference is a key event in the history of European imperialism and the colonization of Africa. Its outcomes shaped the contours of Africa's political map, and its consequences continue to influence the continent's geopolitics and social dynamics.